Hey there, it's Andrea, and welcome to the Voice of Influence podcast. Today, I am so thrilled to introduce you, if you haven't met her already, to Lisa Rothstein. She is a New Yorker magazine cartoonist, consultant, and speaker who helps leaders cut through complexity and drive buy in using visual storytelling. As a former Madison Avenue Creative Executive for IBM and Haynes, Lisa discovered that simple drawings can communicate what words alone cannot. Through her company, Drawing Out Your Genius, she teaches executives and change agents how to use visual thinking to align teams, secure stakeholder support, and lead transformation. Lisa is a San Diego's chapter chair of the National Cartoonists Society, and she has a new book out called Drawing Out Your Genius. Use visual storytelling to sell ideas, drive buy-in, and lead change. Lisa, welcome to the
Thank
Voice
you
of
so much
Influence
for that
podcast.
intro, Andrea. That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Oh my goodness! So we're colleagues. We're
Hmm.
colleagues and we're friends
Yes,
because we have called each other before for various reasons
right.
and talked through some business stuff and I also commissioned you to do a drawing for my parents.
That's right. I did a cartoon for your parents. Right.
Yeah, for their 50th wedding anniversary. It was so
Hmm.
special.
That was great.
Um, yeah. And just like the amount of specialness around that particular thing is like beyond what we could even explain
Well,
on
I loved
this
how you told the
show.
story of their engagement and everything, and it just came out so cute in the cartoon. So
It
it was
really did.
it really
It
did.
really did. Maybe if I get a chance, I'm going to maybe take a picture of it or something. Is that okay if I take a picture of it and like throw it up on the
Sure,
video? Okay,
absolutely.
we'll throw a picture of the up on the video if you're watching it on YouTube. Um, anyway, this is so great. So I'm thrilled to have you here. How have you been doing? First of all, like what have you been up to lately?
Well, the book was took up a lot of my attention, and frankly, I only did it because people insisted. Because I have every book on this topic. There are a lot of other books that have been written about, visual thinking. There's one called Visual Thinking that's one of my favorites. And so I was feeling like, well, the world doesn't need another one of these books. And I have been speaking about this for a while now at the Association for Talent Development Conference and various innovation conferences and inside of companies like Merck and Bayer to help train their people on how to use visuals in their communication and collaboration. And people are always asking me, "Do you have a book?" And I'm thinking, well, there's a million books. And eventually people are like, well, people want your book, especially if they come and hear you speak, they want to be able to buy your book. And I went to the Association for Talent Development in 2024 as a speaker, and everyone there had a book except for me. And it was really annoying. Everyone kept asking, "Do you have a book?" And I'm like, "Oh God, should have a book." So eventually, I listened, and I decided to make this one. I was thinking, well, I don't want to just add to the noise. What can I do to add something to the conversation? And one of the things that I noticed about the books that I have, a lot of it was very scientific and neuroscience about like visuals and how they remain in the brain and all of that stuff. It's all very interesting, but people that I wanted to talk to just want to learn how to do this quickly, get over their fear of not being a quote unquote artist. And how can I use this right away? I had this hallucination that they really weren't looking for something to give them some kind of a science lesson. So I specifically don't talk about that much in the book. I have a page about it that says, "Hey, if you're interested in these statistics, here's where to go on my website to download or to access a bunch of articles that will convince you that different parts of the brain are used and all that kind of stuff." But for the most part, I make very very brief references to those sorts of things, and I don't go into it a lot. The other thing that makes it different, and I thought, well, nobody else who's done any of these books is a professional cartoonist like I am now. And I thought, what do I bring to this that other people don't because of that? And that is really the humanity, the human emotion and expressions. And that's what attracted me to cartooning in the first place. I have on my desk, it's over there. Unfortunately, I can't show it to you, but a little book of Snoopy cartoons. That was the first thing I ever bought with my own money. I was like 5 years old. It was 40 cents. So I can date myself a little bit. But I used to stare at those pictures and go, how is it possible that just a couple of lines difference between this face and that face makes this is angry, this is sad, this is embarrassed. And I feel those feelings looking at those pictures. How is that possible? What is this magic? And I've pretty much spent my life trying to, figure that out. And now I love teaching other people to do it. And they're amazed that even if they think they can't even draw a stick figure, that they can actually do this, because it really is a language that we all probably knew when we were 5, but has been drummed out of us because people were criticizing our artistic ability rather than our ability to communicate with visuals. So I'm really excited that this part of my life and career has become devoted more to that. I had a whole career in advertising for years and years. I thought I'd do that forever. And I wasn't even doing artwork then. I was a writer. But this has really become like a mission for me to bring this mode of expression to more people, especially people who think that they don't draw very well.
Oh my goodness. You do it so well. Like at the very beginning, you set us all up with the worse it looks, the better it works.
Yep. That's my catchphrase. That's my new favorite phrase.
I love it. So, I was like, immediately my whole like sense of being just sort of like, lightened up. Like it was like, oh, there's not a lot of pressure here.
Well, I mean, not only is there no pressure, there's actually pressure to not try to make it pretty. The first time I ever gave this talk, it was at the Adobe 99U conference, and I had never given this talk before. And I was still working on the slides literally the morning of the presentation. I was just like not ready at all. But I was thinking, well, it doesn't really matter because nobody's going to show up to my talk because there's a lot of breakout sessions at the same time as mine. Everybody who's coming is way more famous than me. So maybe I'll have a handful of people and I'll just be able to wing it. Well, when I got there, the room was standing room only, full of people, and I could not understand it. I even asked folks, like, why are you here? Because it's a bunch of designers at a design conference, and I'm here teaching about how to do like the most basic kindergarten level doodles for your work. And most people said, well, I spent all my time behind a computer. I really wanted to express myself drawing again. And some people had seen my work in the New Yorker, so I didn't realize I was known by these folks. But the crazy thing was that as we were going through the workshop, I noticed that because these folks were designers, a lot of them were trying really hard to make exactly perfect circles and erasing things and all that stuff. It's like, no, 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 no. I said, you actually have to turn off that part of your brain that thinks, oh, I'm good at this. Because being good at this in terms of making it look nice, it's actually a hindrance in my mind to communication. Because then the more you have people looking at the picture, the less they're thinking about what the picture means. And so when I do something and people say, oh, you're such a great artist, my heart sinks, because I don't want you to compliment me as an artist. I want you to look at what I'm creating and saying, oh, what does this mean to you? Let's have a conversation about it. This is a means to an end, not an end in itself. And it's hard because you want to make it, you don't want to have it be sloppy and ugly. But at the same time, as like one of the other things I say in the book is, as long as it reads, it succeeds. And so that's that, there's a certain level of clarity that needs to be there so that it does what it's supposed to do. But when people say, oh, I love your drawing, I kind of cringe a little bit, because that's not the purpose of my doing it. So in a way, the more basic it is, the less it draws attention to itself, and people are able to look through the drawing instead of at it and start to have a conversation about it.
Yeah. So it's like it serves a purpose for something else. It serves a purpose for the conversation, is what you're
right. That's what it's for. It's to bring people together and to help them understand each other, not just look at something in a passive or just kind of a passive way, or just I'm just observing this and I'm making a comment about how it looks. What does it mean?
That really has me thinking about even how I use visuals. So I use a lot of visuals, and in particular, the context kind of visuals that are contextual models and things. But the way that you're talking about the drawing, even, the whole thing, the way that you're talking about visuals, it makes me think that I need to rethink how these are used, how I actually use them instead of, I don't know, maybe instead of just like a teaching tool, a conversation tool, I guess.
Well, and the other thing is that it can literally be an illustration of what you mean. So there's a guy named Ryan Levesque. He does digital marketing and a bunch of things. But one of the things that I stole from him that I teach other people, especially if you're doing a Zoom conversation like this, is what he calls smile, slide, sketch. And smile is me talking. Here's my head talking on your podcast, and then I might go to my slides, which is my PowerPoints, and everybody's sitting there, in Zoom fatigue, looking at the PowerPoint slides and going, oh. But then it's like, okay, now let me show you what I mean. And now I can switch over to my document camera or my iPad, and then I'll draw in real time. Here's a diagram of what, or kind of a doodle of what I'm talking about. And it gets people's attention, but it also just, it puts things in context. It kind of, and it rotates the modality of what people are looking at. So as long as you keep rotating those three things, the smile gives you the personal connection, the slides gives you most of the information, and sketch gives you examples and stories about how this could work in real life. Now I'm understanding so much more, and I'm remembering so much more. And when I do this, invariably people say, can I get those sketches after the meeting? Can I get your doodles after the meeting? No matter how chicken scratchy they are. And a lot of times they really are, because when you're doing it live, there's no time to mess around and make it pretty. Everybody asks for that. And I've noticed it with other people too. Other people I know who do this sort of thing, and who add iPad drawings or other kinds of drawings to their meetings. The comments are full of, please send the drawings. Because the drawings help them remember and understand what the person was talking about way more than that 50-page slide deck that no one's ever going to look at again. So
love that.
It's just a great thing to have as an addition to what you're already doing. So you don't need to change your presentation or anything that you're saying, but it's just kind of a little extra thing. Oh, let me show you what I mean.
Okay, so let's talk about kind of who this is for. Who should be thinking about using doodles and drawing?
Well, I feel like it's anybody who needs to communicate with folks who might not understand them. Or let's make this more specific. If you need to get buy-in from somebody else, either a customer or somebody in the C-suite who you might need some support or some funding from, or even from your kids. I mean, if you wanted to do it a personal way, if you want to get their buy-in, they, number one, need to understand what you're talking about. And they also need to feel as if they are part of the conversation. So when I do a drawing in real time, what I'm also doing is I'm listening to what the other person is saying and making sure that some of what they have to say gets into the picture. So now, instead of just a diagram that I might draw, which is still better than nothing, there's now a co-created thing where they see that this meeting could not have been an email. There's my word or a picture of what I just said on the picture. Now I co-own this image. Now I'm much more likely to support this initiative or to kind of champion it for someone else. So one of the things I do teach is for salespeople. I have a course that I piloted a couple of times that I called Sketch to Sell, that I hope to offer again at some point. But the idea is, if you can draw what your prospect is, their fears or their goals or what they're trying to change and things like that, and they see even if it's really rudimentary, that you've been paying attention. They see in the picture their thoughts. I came up with that idea because a colleague of mine from the same group that we belong to, I think, asked me to draw a picture for him when he was going to make a sort of a second conversation with a prospect. He'd already had his initial meet and greet, and now he was going to come back to them with some kind of an offer. And he had a few different options that he was going to offer them. One of them was very basic, and at the highest level one, the most expensive one, was a year's worth of consulting and kind of working with the person on their business, not just fixing a technical problem. And he told me the story of what they had talked about in their first meeting. And I drew a little diagram of, like, here's where the person is and all their problems and what they're thinking and what's bothering them. And over on the right side, I drew a picture of where they said they wanted to be, on the beach in Mexico, surrounded by bags of money, no worries in the world about their business. And then here was like a little sort of bridge or like stair climbing thing that went from left to right. Here's the steps we're going to take to get you from this problem to this happy place. And, I basically just drew what I heard him say, and I sent it to him. And a couple of days later, he's kind of like, you're not going to believe it. She She went right away from my most expensive offer. She was like, that's it. I know I want to work with you. And he said, and I'll never forget this, because of that picture you showed me, I saw that you heard me. And when I heard those words, I saw that you heard me. I was thinking that's something I think I can really help people with.
Oh yeah.
When you draw something with other people, they see that you actually heard them. They don't feel like, why did I come here? Why is this person just delivering their spiel, which I could have watched this on a video or a recording or something. It's much more involving. So to answer your question in a very long and roundabout way, anytime you need to get someone else's support or buy-in, it's a great way of supporting what you were already going to tell them. It's also a great way of summarizing for people who might not be as technical as you, what's in it for them and what's the main idea and the benefit. I know that you and I both know about the Kolbe assessment.
Yeah.
It may not surprise you to know that I'm a 10 quick start.
Yeah.
But I'm also a 3 fact finder. And that what that means is not that I don't care about the facts, but that I like to okay, what's the main idea here? Like, let's cut through the clutter. Let's drill, just cut to the chase. And so if you have a lot of information, which we all do, we are all really, really involved with all of the inside baseball stuff of what we do. And I find this is the most true with people who work in pharma or technology, doctors, lawyers. They all have their own jargon and their own details that they get into the weeds about, that the person that they're trying to convince or enroll has no interest in, no understanding of. It just confuses them. It's just a bunch of Charlie Brown's teacher, want, doesn't mean anything to them, right? So when you do a drawing, it forces you to okay, what are we talking about here? What's really the conversation? What do I need you to know? And if you want to know more, you can always look at the 50-page slide deck. But right now we're talking about this. And it forces you into a more summarized version of what you're trying to say.
We're all sitting here going, okay, this sounds really, really interesting, but how in the world can I do that? And I think what I want to make sure that people understand is you don't need a whole lot of information to learn how to do this, but you provide it in your book. So what to do with circles, just explain this simple skill to us.
Okay. I'm going to try something, which I have not tried recently.
Okay.
I am going to change my camera to my down camera here and see if it works. So what we were talking about is you can make circles. You can see those, right?
Yep.
You can make circles and they can be lots of different things. And so look, they're not perfect. Some of them are a little lopsided. We don't care, right? So if I do this, so what I just did was I added these two little squiggles there. And now we have something that looks like the Earth.
It really does.
Yeah, it's not I'm not drawing the United States right here with here's Texas. And I'm not doing that, right? Okay. No. I'm just, this is the Earth. That's enough, right?
Yep.
If I put a little triangle down here and now you have this, now it's a party balloon, right? I'm just doing this. I wasn't planning on doing this in this, so I'm just being really real. So that to me is a
life preserver. Yeah, you got to just a couple of lines on one side and a couple lines on the other.
Yeah,
and
that's all. That's all I did with that. And then you've got, let's see, what else could we do? Well, any kind of a donut or bagel or anything like that. I'm not sure why you would want that, but you might want
circle
that.
In a circle, some dots.
Yeah, obviously you can always do, a happy face or a sad face, and you can always do a peace sign. So now, all these things can be done with a circle. In fact, there's a great icebreaker that people do in facilitation called 30 circles that literally you make people draw 30 circles and then you give them 5 minutes to fill them up, make them into whatever. And some people put 2 of them together and make eyeglasses, and some people took a bicycle or things like that. But it's really interesting to see, well, how many people made fruits and how many people made balls and how many people made faces and planets and things like that. But the point is, you can do a lot of things with just a circle. But here's the most important part. I'm going to erase everything here except this one. So now we got our really rudimentary Earth, right? So, but here's the thing. So what? I drew a picture of the world. It doesn't really matter, except that now if I wrote this word on top, now we're having a conversation about a piece. Yeah, right. So now I'm having a conversation about everybody getting along and what about that? But if I decided I didn't want that word there, I didn't want to have a conversation about that, I might want to have a conversation about something else, and I could call it travel. And it's oh, well, gee, we could take a plane there, we could take a car there, we could walk there. Here we have feet. I mean, there's lots of but you have the same earth in the middle, right? And it focuses people's attention, but it's a completely different conversation, And if
With just
I
a few squiggles.
with just a few squiggles, and if I just decide to, I'm just going to trying to undo all of this. If I decided I wanted to have a conversation about this, and I'm just writing climate, because that's a big conversation right now. We could be talking about like, oh, nuclear power plants, and what about the sun, and what about the airplane again? Like, oh no, if you're using fuel, so things like that, and we still have the same picture in the middle, right? But now we're having a conversation about how do we reduce these emissions, or how do we use alternative ways of generating power that don't impact the environment so much, or whatever. So my point being that with many of these little symbols that anybody can draw and anyone can do, some of them have a lot of different symbolic meanings depending on what context you put them in, what words you put with them, and everything like that. So really one picture can mean a lot of different things depending on what you decide to make it mean. It's like algebra, like let x equal whatever, right? I was using an iPad there because it's faster to go back and forth than just a piece of paper, but you do not have to have. Everyone's asking me, look, what do you use? What's that program you're using on your iPad? Okay, it's Procreate. It's called Procreate. It's like $12. It's not Procreate Dreams. Procreate Dreams is for animation, which is great too. This is just the regular Procreate. And it's an iPad Pro, 12.9 inch. Like, everyone wants to know those things, and an Apple Pencil, fine. But you could do the same exact thing with a piece of paper and a Sharpie. It was just faster and easier, on the situation to be able to do it this way.
Yeah.
So the whole book is kind of like this. What's the easiest, fastest way for you to tell your story with pictures that allow lots of people to chime in, to contribute? So you can see with a picture like that, there's also a lot of white space, and the white space is for you and for other people to add stuff to it. One of the things I love about this kind of work is that it's not finished. It's not high fidelity. It is as low fidelity and unfinished as you can possibly get, which leaves a lot of space for other people's contributions and for iterations and innovations and things. That's why I work so much with people in innovation, because it's when they're thinking on paper or drawing on paper or on a whiteboard, everybody can have like, oh well, what if we added this, or what if we did that, which is so much harder when you're just trying to describe it in words, and everybody forms a different picture in their own mind, and they think they all agree. And then how many times have you gone to a meeting where where everyone walks out thinking that was a great meeting, we all agree on this, and then you come back the next time and everyone's like, well, that's not what we said, that's not what we agreed. It's like, well, yes, it is. It's exactly what we agreed, because they didn't literally share a common picture about what actually happened. Everybody had their own interpretation, and doing it this way or adding this really cuts down on a lot of that misunderstanding and confusion.
I think there's so many things that it does. It kind of releases creativity. It releases our minds to be able to think differently.
Yeah.
And that in and of itself is so important right now. And I mean, I think it's always been important to know how to think creatively, or to be able to think creatively, but like, it's really easy to get bogged down into words and the tasks at hand and whatnot. It's harder to let that go. It's harder to release the creativity in your mind.
Well, and it's, doing this also, it has a playful kind of aspect to it that lets people relax a little bit. Okay, we don't have to take this so completely seriously. I don't have to be so buttoned up and act like I'm, sitting in like a, I'm not like delivering a PhD dissertation. We're just having a conversation and trying to come up with a solution to a problem. It makes it a lot more, like you said, creative. And when we say creative, a lot of people think, oh, creative meaning artistic. No, creative meaning thinking differently than what you've already thought, not going around the same circle over and over and over again, the same road that we've always, not doing things. This is the way we've always done it.
Yeah.
This is a chance to kind of like, well, what if it were different? And to help allow people to kind of just free their imagination to where they could actually maybe have a new idea. Instead of, sometimes you just don't feel like you can think of anything else. We've already tried everything really, maybe not, like, and so maybe you end up with some ideas that are a little bit crazy, but then you run them through all kinds of filters. I do a lot of stuff with design thinking, like, well, okay, is this feasible? Is this practical? Is this something that can be done quickly? Is this cost effective? Well, maybe not, but at least we had the idea now. But what if we, how could we do this in a way that is cost effective? Now at least you're having a conversation, you know? So so yeah, that's super important. And the other thing that you said that I think is really important is words. I mean, I'm a writer, so I love words, but especially in the corporate world, I don't know about you, but I don't know how many times I've sat in a keynote address or a meeting, and the person has a beautiful command of language, fantastic vocabulary. I know they're speaking English, but I walk out of there and somebody says, "What do they talk about?" It's like, I can't really tell you. I don't really know, and it's like, I understood all the words, but they didn't mean anything to me, because a lot of it was corporate jargon and a lot of it was fluff and a lot of it definitely didn't help with comprehension. And I do think that some people in corporate speak in a way that is on purpose meant not to tell you anything. They want to show that they showed up and gave a speech, but they don't really want to actually communicate something for whatever reason. Whereas when you're drawing a picture, there's no place to hide. It's like, this is it. It's much more, in many ways, more honest, and more direct than all of the fluff and the corporate jargon that you might hear in a speech, and that you might even be saying yourself and not realizing that, oh, I want to sound educated and important, so I'm going to use all these big words. It's like, well, but people aren't really getting it, right? So this helps people get it. And that's what I think is most important.
I mean, I'm already thinking, okay, what kind of activities do I want to incorporate into our leadership development programs to help people to just start to imagine, sharing their ideas in this way? This is just so exciting.
Yeah.
It's also so human. And that is one of the things that we have to talk about.
Yeah.
Why is that so important? I mean, obviously, we're talking about moving into this world that's going to be more and more machine oriented.
Right.
What are your
kind
thoughts?
of, yeah, absolutely. Well, not just machine oriented, but sort of like pseudo human. I mean, yes. I won't lie. I talk to Claude all day long. My husband's jealous. I listen to Claude all day, talk to Claude all day long, and in ChatGPT. But Claude's my favorite now. Claude's my current squeeze. I used to use this thing called Sintra that I think you know about, that, but I think they're feeling neglected and abandoned because I do everything with Claude now. So I mean, I'm not dissing AI. However, we do risk losing a lot of our edge in our own creative thought process when we offload so many things that we would normally have to think of ourselves to these machines. I can't say that I'm not doing that as much as possible, because we all want to be more efficient and productive. However, I mean, a lot of studies are showing that human skills are going to be the things, besides prompt engineering, human skills are going to be the things that people are going to need to really bump up and prioritize in the future if they're going to add any value. And that's the sort of thing like creative thinking and lateral thinking and emotional intelligence and communication, which is really something that all of that drawing really helps you do, and a very, like you say, it in a uniquely human way. I'm not talking about creating images like I can go to Grok or to what you call it, Midjourney, and ask it to create an image, something that will look incredibly finished, like Van Gogh painted it or something. But I'm talking about the kinds of images that help people understand and that are collaborative and organic and, like you said, completely human. So far, I don't think that AI will ever be able to do that. I mean, I know that I do something called, some people call it sketch noting, some people call it graphic recording, where I take visual notes at conferences and so basically you have like a visual representation of what the speakers were saying and things, and everybody does it a little bit differently. I'm sure that if it's not already, I'm sure that there's an AI that's going to be able to do that at some point and be able to create a workable piece of content that does, on the surface, does what I do. But what it doesn't do is have my point of view. It has choose the things that I would have chosen to capture and do it in the exact way that I would do it, which I think is what part of people value when they hire me to do it. And other people too, like a lot of other folks who are really good at this and who are well known at that kind of work. They don't people don't just hire them because they want a picture of what the people were saying. They want his picture or her picture of what they were saying, because as I listen to things, I create meaning out of what the folks are saying, or what I think is the meaning, or especially the emotional impact of what they're saying. And there are all these cute little characters floating around that are basically expressing what I consider to be the emotions of what the ideas in the person's talk were the biggest key takeaways for me. And I found that people really appreciate that, even though their key takeaways might have been slightly different. They appreciate someone's point of view, and so that's one thing that you have as a human being that no one else has, is your unique point of view. And I hope that will remain valuable to people. I know it is now. Maybe it will become more valuable. All I know is that it's something that I can do that Claude so far can't really do.
Yeah.
Right now, Claude just tells me how smart I am, no matter what I say.
That actually, yeah, right. Yes.
That's a great idea.
I feel so validated.
Yeah, exactly.
There is a little bit of that, like, oh, thanks. And then you're like, wait a second, you were designed to tell me that.
Exactly.
I did think about that when I was going through your book. There's something so like I said, uniquely human about being able to express yourself on the page, or express yourself and your point of view like that. Mm-hmm. And so if you don't mind sharing just kind of the overall framework of your book, is the sketch framework.
Yeah. So I might have to look at my book again, which I have right here. Right here. I might have to look at it again, but it's a framework, but it's really a way for you to understand how to maybe apply this.
Yeah.
The S in sketch is for simplify. And and basically simplifying complex concepts into very basic drawings. And so that chapter of the book is really the biggest and the most meaty, and it's probably pretty much the gist of what I usually go out and train about, and that is how to do what I call the 3 C's. So I try to make it as simple as possible, like to put the kinds of drawings you might want to do into 3 very distinct and easy to manage buckets. And so what I try to say is, like, listen, you don't need to speak French perfectly and be able to read Balzac to be able to go into a cafe and order a coffee. You don't need to know everything. You don't need to draw the Mona Lisa to be able to do what I'm telling you about. So the 3 C's that you'll find out about in the simplified section of the sketch framework is character, concepts, and context. Character is what I've already talked to you a little bit about. That's how to draw people or human emotions, let's put it that way. Not so much people, but human emotions in a very simple but very effective way, quickly, like I learned from reading Charlie Brown, really fast, and it adds a lot to your communication.
Literally just lines. Like,
yeah, literally just lines. And as hard. You saw with the earth, well, that's concepts, but I teach people how to kind of go beyond the stick figure. Mm-hmm. And which to me is kind of dehumanizing and doesn't give any emotional impact at all. It just shows a person is there. It's like, well, what's going on with that person? It's actually very easy to add that into your communication. It adds so much. It makes people really engage. So character is the first C. Concepts is the second C. Concept is like the earth I just showed you. Concepts are like where most people start with visual thinking, symbols, icons, the things you can make out of a circle, things you can make out of a square. And just like with the circles that I showed you, that could mean a lot of different things. A picture of an envelope, which is basically a square with like a triangle drawn on top, could mean email. It could mean snail mail. It could mean, all kinds of different messages, things like that. So there's lots of things you can do with very, very simple shapes that you can then add into your visual vocabulary. And then there is, so we talked about character, concepts, and then context. Context is what you were talking about at the beginning. What a road, a bridge, any kind of a diagram, like a Venn diagram or an effort impact scale, things like that. I love icebergs because they can do so many different things. The problem that you see on top of the water is you everybody sees that, but what's under the water is like, well, what are all the things we don't see that contributed to that problem? What are all the things and all the people and all the and the environment that's taking place in that's making that problem happen? And now we can have a conversation about well, which of these things, if we fixed it, would have the biggest impact on what's going on top of the water. That's one I love to use. So context is mostly metaphors, but in many cases diagrams and things. And I break those down into a few different things. There's metaphors like the road and the bridge and the iceberg. And then there's kind of sequences like, well, first you do this, then you do this, then you do that. So you've got things like stairs or numerical sequences and things. And then you've got things that are more spatial relationships, like how do these things interdepend? So puzzle pieces, Venn diagrams, an atom with a nucleus in the middle, like, okay, like how do these things relate to each other? So I know I'm making it sound a little more complicated than it actually is, but that's only the first chapter of the book.
I think that's what you're saying, is that you are providing a new way of communicating. Right. It's another way of communicating these different things.
Right.
And if people want to like look into it, I mean, I just want to show just like a quick, if you can see, like this is the book. Like it is not a hard read. This is super interesting and interesting to look at. And if people want to learn these little steps, you're giving a very simplified step-by-step process and learning how to do it.
Right. I mean, I think there's probably at least, I remember when I was talking to my designer, I think it's like 200 illustrations in there. I mean, some of them are very simple. So it's mostly pictures. That was another peeve I had with the books that I have. A lot of them are very wordy instead. And it's kind of ironic when we're talking about how to do stuff with pictures. So I thought, no, I want a lot of visuals in my book. So just to get through it quickly, the K stands for Kickstart Innovation. So we talked a little bit about innovation already and design thinking. Obviously, I did a little bit of contortions to make everything spell sketch, but it'll help you remember everything. And then engaging your audience and getting buy-in. So that's where we talk about engagement in general, but also sales, like what I talked to you about just before with the work that I did with that one guy, and then also the course that I teach about sketching to sell. The T is for transform, and that's for transforming really boring meetings into more engaging, fun, interesting collaborations rather than just a top-down sage on the stage. Here I am telling you, and you're sitting there passively, like those characters in the 1984 Apple commercial. And I'm like, oh, they're just sitting there watching. There's a cartoon at the beginning of this one that I'm really proud of. That was in the New Yorker. I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but it's got the devil in hell looking down on a bunch of people. Little naked people on their laptops, all looking pretty miserable. And the devil is telling his little assistant, "Oh, it's new. We placed them in an endless video conference with everyone they couldn't stand in life." And so the funny thing about that cartoon is that it ran in June of 2020. Does anybody remember what was going on in June of 2020?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it was only 6 months into the COVID crisis, and we were already tired of Zoom meetings then.
It's like 3 months into the COVID crisis.
A few months in. Yeah. So at that point, we were already sick of Zoom meetings, and we didn't realize we were going to have another few years of being stuck on Zoom all the time. So we've been to SKET, then we're C in capture. C is for capture. So capturing what matters. That's where I talk to you about visual note taking. Not so much the way I do it as professionally, although you certainly could do it professionally. I'm happy to help folks who want to do that, but just for yourself. I mean, even if you're just sitting in a meeting or a seminar and you take visual notes, first of all, everyone wants them. You have people sitting next to you, you're gonna be like, oh, can I take a picture of that? But also for yourself to be able to remember when you look back at your notes, what was actually happening, what was actually said, why it mattered to you at the time. Because I don't know how many times you've been to a seminar, you took voluminous notes, and then you find your notebook years later and go, what did that mean? Why did I even write that down? I can tell I remember I thought it was important at the time, but I cannot remember why. But if you take notes and visuals, you will be surprised. You remember a lot more, that not only because of what you drew, but also just the fact that you were drawing and using that part of your brain. You will remember so much more about, I remember what I was wearing and who I was with and just everything, because you've engaged more of and you've also engaged physically, the whole visual kinesthetic audio thing that we always talk about. And then so let's see, I'm down to the end. Harmonize. H is for harmonizing teams. So that's really about getting people on the same page and the alignment that we talked about earlier in our conversation, where, instead of everybody walking out with their own idea of what happened in the meeting, we now have a means of getting some consensus and an artifact that everyone can refer back to later and say, oh yes, now I remember we talked about this. Yes, we said we were going to do this and then that. So you walk out with kind of a record and a map of what was decided, so that it lessens disagreements. It doesn't mean you can't change it later, but at least you walk out with the same idea of what we all agreed to do and who was responsible, what this should look like in the end, and all of that. And you have something to work with instead of spending the first half of the next meeting trying to remember what the heck you decided last time. Right.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So that's something I can't stand. And I know everyone hates. That's one of the reasons people hate meetings, is that so much of it seems unnecessary. So if you can mitigate that just by drawing a simple doodle, then it just makes it a lot less tedious and boring to have a meeting.
Yeah.
Right.
Love that.
Yeah.
It's such a great resource for people to, number one, I think, like I said, free themselves from feeling like, in that corporate kind of linear thinking bubble, and be able to express themselves differently, but also to communicate differently, to be more human, to, like you said, get the buy-in, because you're able to empathize in a different way. You're able to communicate that you've heard them, and there's just so many things. So I'm just really happy for you and this book. Congratulations on it.
Thank you. I'm excited about it, and especially just being able to spread the word about this kind of thing. And also, I just want to make sure that your listeners understand. As much as I love teaching about this, it is not something that's meant to substitute for anything else that you're doing. It's not meant to. I'm not saying, oh, you should draw pictures instead of giving a speech or instead of doing a PowerPoint or instead. No, it's like a flavor enhancer. Like whatever it is you're already doing, this helps make it more fun, more human, more understandable, more collaborative. And so it just enhances what you're already doing. And so I encourage you can add it in little doses. You don't have to like suddenly jump in and like, oh, now I have to draw everything. No, it's just, every once in a while it's like, hey, if I had to show somebody what I was talking about and make a little diagram for them right here and now, what would I do? If you're having trouble with that, it might not mean that you don't know how to draw it. It might mean that you're not exactly clear yourself about what it is you're trying to say. And it kind of makes you get a little more honest with yourself about, am I really clear about this? Because I know I can talk a good game about it, but I'm not sure I actually really understand what I'm hoping that they get out of this. So in a way, it forces you to simplify things for yourself and clarify things for yourself. There's a lot of clarity that comes from drawing, just like clarity comes from writing. A lot of people write so that they can get clear in their mind about what they're saying. And I find that pictures do pretty much the same thing, just with a different modality.
Yeah. Okay. So there are a couple questions that I've been asking all my guests. So I was wondering if you don't mind if I ask. Okay. So this really does relate to, you were saying that when you were little, you bought this book, that the first book that you bought was this Peanuts book or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, at what point did you really feel like you could do something? Maybe it was with drawing, but maybe it was with something else, that your voice really mattered, that you could make a difference that would change things, help shape the future, if you will.
When I was little and I was looking at that, that sort of really mattered to me. My parents, who were brought up during the Depression, thought that if I tried to make a living doing that kind of work, I would probably starve in the street. And they would tell me pretty much every day that I would be out on the street selling pencils. I don't even know what that means. I still don't know what that means, but apparently somebody, if you were really poor, you'd be out on the street selling pencils. So that's how I ended up in the advertising business. And at the time, I loved advertising because it's still about storytelling, and it was just storytelling for products. And we all actually took it extremely seriously. How the work was really important, it seemed like at the time. And, after a while, though, going 10 rounds with clients about whether or not the snuggle teddy bear should say the towels were cuddly or snuggly, I really kind of went like, is this really all there is to life? At the time I was single, and, I really didn't have a whole lot going on in my life. And I'm thinking, and I started going back to what did I care about as a kid? And I started doing more of the drawing, and like, what is it about that it, to me, feels so important. And it really is, to me, about communication. And especially now in a time when there's so much division and there's so many people talking past each other. One of the things I love so much about when I do my workshops is when people share their drawings with each other and tell the stories with each other. You can see them see each other's humanity in a way that they would not do if they were just talking. It's like, oh, here's a picture of the person who inspired me most of my life. It was my dad or my swimming coach or whatever it was. And they talk about it and they tell the story, but the little doodle that they drew is just so, I don't know, it's just so sweet, and then the other person can look at it and see something of the essence of that other person. And to me, that's just something really beautiful about that makes it really hard to hate the other guy, even if you don't agree with them about almost anything else. It creates a share. It reminds us of our shared humanity, and that's why I care about this. And so, I mean, I won't tell you how old I am, but I'm not young anymore. And I feel like right now is when I'm actually getting to the point where where my voice really does matter and is making a difference in people's lives, more than when I was in a more, let's call it, a prestigious career. And yet I won't say it felt empty, because it was still a great job and I loved the people I worked with, but I didn't feel like it was making that great an impact. So
that's really cool.
Yeah, it is.
Another question is a question about mentorship. So think about a mentor or people that you've seen as mentors in your life. And I'm just wondering, what is something that they've done for you that you want to pass on to others, that you want to do for others as a mentor?
Well, it's funny. I just posted something on LinkedIn. I was recently at a meeting of the National Cartoonist Society. They have one every year. And I got to meet up with someone I consider a mentor, even though she swore she didn't want to be anybody's mentor. Her name is Lynn Johnston, and she was the cartoonist who behind the very popular comic strip For Better or For Worse that ran for like 40 something years. I think she's retired now, but they still run the strip as sort of reruns. Something that she did for me was when I was still kind of just a fangirl, she looked at my work, saw something in it, introduced me to some folks, and really helped me with my career. Did help me as much as she could. There was no way she could control what they would do with what I did, but it was very kind of her to take the time to even notice if I had the kind of talent that she thought would be worthwhile. And even though she said, "Oh, I never want to mentor anybody again because they never take my advice," and then she proceeded to mentor me. So I hope that I'd like to be able to see what other people are doing, especially people who want to be a cartoonist or want to do sketch notes as for work. I'm really happy to help folks with their careers, and help them figure out how to get clients and all that kind of stuff. Because as I'm sure a lot of us love the work that we do, but as far as getting business and things when we're in our own business, it's a completely different set of skills and a completely different mindset when you have to go out and sell your own things. I learned that the hard way when I left the advertising agency world and started selling my own services. I used to complain so much. We all did about, oh, we have to work the weekend. Oh, our boss is a jerk, blah, blah, blah. But then I realized what a luxury it was to have somebody else be in charge of keeping the lights on and getting the clients, and all I had to do was show up and do my creative work and then go home, eventually. So yeah, I love to help people who want to do something with their creative talents, figure out how to make that something that they can do for work and not just as a hobby.
And you mentioned working with clients, and I don't know that we really explained what you do. Could you just briefly explain what you do with
Yeah,
clients?
that's that changes every time I have this conversation. But basically, there are a few different ways I work with clients. One is I do go to events and capture pretty much what everybody is saying at the event. This is from a talk that was given at a recent conference that I covered for a company called Woodard, where the audience is mostly accountants and accountancy firms. And so this fellow Ron Baker was talking about how to give a talk from burnout to betrayal, and talked about how not to burn out your folks. So this is the sort of thing that I'll do at an event, and I'll end up doing like half a dozen or a dozen or 18 of them at the event. And what's really cool is that the software that I use does a sort of a time lapse replay, which
Oh, that's so cool.
if you're watching on video right now, you can see. So it creates another piece of content that allows me to, like, I can download this and turn this into a video with a voiceover and music and things like that. So hours conversation, hours talk could turn into a 1 minute sort of summary recap of what the person said. So we do that live in the room, like while I'm working. But this is just one of the ways that I work with clients. I'm going to go to done on this. So that's where it ends up. But the other ways are, I will, I give workshops that which I mentioned before about how to draw for communication. So when I go in and I work with clients, I can give them a workshop that teaches them that stuff, and then also goes into the specifics of their own company's issues, and like we'll come up with a visual vocabulary that's just for them. Like, let's talk about the kind of conversations that you usually have, and come up with drawings that you can easily reproduce, that when you're in that moment, you can pull them out and amaze your prospects and your customers and your team. So that's another thing. And then there's also just facilitation that I'll do, where other people are having a meeting, and I will help them with strategy and things, and help them really remember what they said in the strategy meeting, especially in corporate retreats and things like that, and not have it just sort of disappear into the ether when they go back to the office. And then finally, because of my long career in advertising, I do a lot of sometimes visual and sometimes just verbal and sometimes both, storytelling inside of companies that help them come up with campaigns that are either for internal or external use, to help them communicate big ideas in a very simple and impactful way. And lastly, because of my cartooning work, I will sometimes illustrate books, or books and other kinds of communication using sort of New Yorker style cartoons or comic strips and things like that, that help tell a story in a more engaging way, especially when it's something a little dull, like onboarding or cybersecurity and things like that, that sometimes become a little abstract and boring, can really come to life with pictures.
Yes. Okay, great. Do you mind if we do a quick rapid fire before we wrap it up?
Absolutely.
Okay. The thing you draw the most.
The thing I draw the most is dogs.
That's what I thought. Okay, I could have guessed that. That was my guess. Okay. The best slogan that you've worked on.
Oh, that's an easy one. Wait till we get our hands on you.
So amazing.
That's my
I actually could have guessed that one too.
that's
Okay,
my big
two
claim
for
to
two.
fame. Yeah, business. Yeah. Okay.
Your favorite form of self-expression.
My favorite form of self-expression. I mean, I would just have to be cartoons. I mean, I just love to draw cartoons of everything.
Fair.
Yeah.
The favorite cartoon that you've created.
My favorite cartoon that I've created is, I can't show it to you now because I don't have it in front of me, but it's a cartoon of two dogs meeting in the park. And you've seen that one. It's like the two people walking their dogs, and the dogs are hugging, like, "Oh my God, I haven't seen you since yesterday." And the man is saying to the woman, "Well, I guess you're right. We must have met before." Because the dogs know each other, right? So and so that happened to me in New York all the time. Like my dog would be so excited to see someone else's dog, and I'm thinking, I don't recognize that person at all. I don't like, but obviously my dog knows their dog, so we must have talked, but I don't remember them at all. So that's it. Yeah, and so it became a very popular cartoon. It's been licensed a lot.
And then finally, what inspires you?
What inspires me? I love to see other people using their creative talents in ways that that inspire other people. So I'm very inspired by other people's creative work, and I have so many books by other folks, and I love going to museums. And I just recently saw the John Singer Sargent exhibit in New York City, and just marvel at the portraiture and everything. So I recently took a animal portrait painting class in Connecticut from someone I've been following on Instagram for years and never met in person. So I just love other people's work, and just love to see their humanity come out in what they do.
Hmm. Where can people find you and your book?
Okay, well, the book is on Amazon. It's Drawing Out Your Genius, and then you can also come and check me out on my website, which is also drawingoutyourgenius.com. And I would love for folks who see this podcast to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Let me know that you saw me on the Voice of Influence podcast, and the kind of little note that you can add to your invitation, so that I know to connect with you. And those are the best ways to reach me.
Okay, final question, I promise. What is one last challenge that you want to offer the listener who wants to help shape the future?
One last challenge to help shape the future. To me, it's really about, I did a lot of talking on this podcast, but to me, it's really mostly about listening. To take the time to really listen to the person that you're with, especially if you know them really well, or if you don't know them at all. Because a lot of times we'll make assumptions, like, I think I can finish my husband's sentences, and half the time I'm wrong. Or, I will make assumptions about people that we are thrown into a room with, that might be from a different culture or something like that, because of, diversity and everything. And we're usually 100% wrong. So the only way to not make those mistakes is to listen.
Mm. Lisa, this has been so much fun. And seriously, congratulations on your book. I hope that everybody picks it up.
Okay, that's great. Thanks a lot.